Hello, Janesville, and welcome back to Park Place Views, the monthly program that aims to keep residents informed by highlighting the people, places, and partners of the City of Janesville. As always, this program is brought to you by the City of Janesville and JATV Media Services. I'm your host, Nick Faust, and I'm the Communications Specialist in the City Manager's Office. In last month's episode, we were joined by Jane Goldberg, Director of Janesville Mobilizing for Change. As her coalition continues its critical work to reduce substance use and promote mental wellness, it was wonderful to hear more information on prevention strategies, community initiatives, and upcoming programs. If you're interested in viewing that episode or any past episode of Park Place Views, they're all available to watch on the city's website or on JATV's YouTube channel. Today, we're joined by Chief David Moore and Sergeant Benjamin Thompson of the JPD. After another year that saw our community's crime rate decrease and ahead of a big summer of community outreach, I look forward to learning more about the JPD's efforts in keeping our community safe. But before we get too far into that, a little more about today's guest. Chief David Moore began his law enforcement career in 1977 with the Janesville Police Department. He holds a bachelor's degree from Mount Scenario College in Criminal Justice Administration and a master's degree in Public and Corporate Communication from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. He was appointed police chief in April of 2009 following a national search for the position. He's a graduate of the FBI National Academy and Northwestern University's School of Police Staff and Command. Chief Moore is a lifelong Janesville resident and is active in many community groups, including Janesville Morning Rotary. Now, Sergeant Benjamin Thompson began his career in law enforcement in June of 1999, also with the Janesville Police Department. He holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. He was promoted to the rank of sergeant in 2015, and in March of this year, he came into his current role leading the JPD's Community Services Division. As a part of these efforts, he helps oversee the School Resource Officer Program, the department's training and hiring efforts, crime prevention, and community outreach. Sergeant Thompson is also a lifelong resident of Janesville and serves on the GIF Men's Shelter Board of Directors. Thanks for joining us today, gentlemen.
Thanks, Nick.
Before we get too far into the business, I thought I'd maybe give you a chance to tell the viewers anything else you'd like them to know about you.
No, you really did a nice job with the overview, and as you mentioned, we didn't stray very far. We stayed pretty close to Janesville.
Yes, some good quality lifers. We appreciate that. Up top, I'd also be remiss, I think, not to mention and really congratulate your team and your community partners on achieving a nearly 40-year crime low in Janesville. With all the metrics that are included in that community crime rate, any big takeaways for folks when it comes to that?
Well, I think the most important item to understand is this is really the community's crime rate. Mm-hmm. It's not the police department's. We really rely on the entire community to drive crime down, and that's, with our partnerships in the community, it's the schools, certainly parenting is a big part of it, churches, Boys and Girls Club, YWCA, YMCA, all of us working collectively. That's what drives down a crime rate. It's not just the police department, but we're very fortunate to have a trusting community that trusts its police department. Those communities that have high trust in their police seem to do the best with their crime rates. Right.
It takes that whole community collaboration, and so important to underscore that. And Chief, for you in particular, being 45 years with the force, and 13 of which is chief, you've actually had quite literally a front row active view in that complete timeline of that crime rate low. What changes and community trends have you noticed in that period?
Yeah, when I look back at my career, it seems now I'm talking in terms of decades instead of just years. But I think it's the community involvement and the police department's problem-solving perspective are the big changes that I've seen. When I first started, officers would just get in a squad car, go out in the field, answer their calls for service, maybe make some traffic enforcement, and call it a day, where we really expect our officers to be engaged with the community, our various philosophies and initiatives that we have, and just being out, being a partner with the community. And likewise, the community is very involved with us, and I think that's what really helps drive that crime rate down.
Right. That forward-thinking approach to it, problem-oriented policing, as you discuss. And as we think about those changes and trends in policing that you're thinking about, how does the department stay on the leading edge of newer concepts and strategies when it comes to law enforcement?
We constantly challenge our staff members to look at what issues are occurring locally, regionally, and nationally. And as we look at those different levels of challenges for communities and policing, we try and forecast how that might look when it comes to Janesville and put action steps in place to address it. For example, shootings in the workplace or active shooters, that's a low frequency event, but we train a lot for those types of issues. So we're constantly looking at what's going on nationally. Most recently, there was the hate crime and shooting in Buffalo, New York, and then this week our staff is making sure we're monitoring social media locally, that we don't have any like-in-kind crimes here in Janesville.
Right. Those different perspectives playing a role in that active effort. I'd also like to maybe then highlight one of those community-focused solutions a little deeper, and the department's really championed it. It's crisis intervention. I was wondering if perhaps either of you could speak a little more to the JPD's work to connect mental health professionals to folks that really need and deserve those resources.
Yeah, pre 2015, we were seeing a trend of a lot of our calls for service were focused around persons that were in some type of mental health crisis. And we weren't really doing anything, or there wasn't anything that we could do per se other than try to help them in the immediate term.
Right.
2015, we formed a crisis intervention team. That team continues to evolve. It enables us to have easy communication with the Human Services Department from Rock County to discuss, persons that maybe we are having frequent contact with that are, appearing to maybe spiral into some type of repetitive behaviors, and try to get them, help on the front end, communicate, try to problem solve a strategy to improve their mental health situation. That program's evolved to an embedded crisis worker in 2020, and I think as the years go on, that'll continue to evolve for our department.
Yeah, great to hear that it's that constant evolution and really problem solving with community partners to establish that continuum of response that's so important for those folks. And even with things like that program and of course our reaffirming crime statistic decreases, we know that there are certain issues in the community and nationally, of course, that still require our attention and law enforcement attention. What areas of focus are really on the JPD's radar when it comes to crime?
Currently, gun crime.
Okay.
You don't have to look very far to some communities close to Janesville that are having very serious gun crime, lots of shootings, homicides. We've been fortunate in Janesville. We average a little over one homicide a year, although that's as tragic as that is. It's certainly not the numbers that other communities are seeing. So we have built a 9-point plan to proactively address gun crime, and the officers have embraced that, and it seems to be working well for us. We're also monitoring violence in the schools. I have to tell you, when I first started out in law enforcement, you never had a call for service in the schools. And now we have officers in our high schools, in our middle schools, and they are very busy. And even with the officers in the schools, we're still having patrol units to assist. So that's something we continue to monitor and work as closely as we can. And a more recent nuance is stolen vehicles. We seem to be kind of in this nexus of Beloit and Janesville and Madison, and we have groups of young adults, sometimes teenagers, stealing these cars. They'll go to other communities and commit crimes. Right. And so that's another thing that we're watching. We're working very closely with Rockford PD, Beloit PD, and Madison PD to try and address that. We've made some arrests, but there are just multiple groups out there that are stealing these cars. In one case, we had a car stolen in Janesville, and they promptly went down to Rockford and were involved in a school shooting. So we know
Wow.
that there's serious consequences from these car thefts. We often find the people that are stealing the cars are armed,
Yeah,
and so it's high risk business for us.
it certainly is. It is, and that I think really underscores, as we've been alluding to, that important regional cooperation with different agencies. And good to hear that you have a plan and you work so closely with those partners. I think maybe moving in a natural transition, and Sergeant Thompson, kind of your bailiwick in your role, how does the JPD ensure that those important community relations and partnerships are sustained and move the city forward in a positive direction?
Well, I think like a strong community engagement
Mm-hmm.
is the bedrock of a successful police department. You know, I think we need to listen to what our residents are saying, take note of the concerns that they have, and then act upon them.
Yeah.
For instance, this morning we had a coffee with the chief event.
Yes.
A resident met with Chief Moore and explained her concerns with some speeding on her roadway. If we don't take some type of action on that, I don't think that builds positive relationships. I don't think that builds faith in
Right.
the department. For her issue is speeding. So, you know, we're going to put our speed message board out there. We're going to deploy some officers to run some radar enforcement. So something as simple as speeding
Yeah.
maybe isn't a big deal to one person, but it's a big deal to her. And I think making sure every resident has a voice and make sure that the police department is meeting the needs of every resident is paramount.
Yeah, yeah. Getting that feedback, actively seeking it, and that all-important action step towards proving the commitment to it is certainly great to hear that the department continues to do that. And thinking about collaboration further and what our citizens can do, like your guest this morning, in keeping Janesville safe, what avenues are there for citizens with concerns?
Well, I'll be very clear on this. People need to call us if they see concerning behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Time and time again, we find violent crimes in America. We find violent crimes in Wisconsin. And on the backside of the violent crime, all these people come forward and say, well, yeah, we knew this person was heading for trouble, or we knew that there was this threat out there. And what we really need citizens in Janesville to do is give us a call. Put that burden on us. We'll investigate it, take the appropriate action, and really our hope is to avoid those very unfortunate circumstances by putting that responsibility on us to do the right thing.
Yeah, and it's too often almost used in a cliche, but it is those warning signs that people do notice that someone is off, a coworker, a friend, a family member, and being cautious about it and not being dismissive of a genuine concern that's so imperative. And if folks at home have questions, for example, or they don't know where to go, necessarily not calling 911 right away, where can they go to connect with somebody from the department?
If it's just a general question about the department or maybe how we could better meet their needs, by all means, they can give me a call, 608-755-3133. They can submit a question on the City of Janesville's website that we can follow up with. If it's a crime in progress or information, the whole see something, say something type of thing, then call the Rock County Communications Center, 608-757-2244. If it's an emergency, dial 911, of course. And if they don't want their identity to get out, they can submit information again through the City of Janesville's website on a Crime Stoppers link.
Wonderful. Important to take use of those resources. And we kind of began with some discussion on this, but certain crimes that are relatively infrequent or even declining in our own community, such as those violent crimes, they're still very rightly concerning when they do occur. However, given their thankfully infrequent occurrence, and Chief, you might have touched on this a bit, but how does the department stay prepared to protect Janesville during a critical incident?
We train, and then train some more is really the answer. Those low frequency, high risk events really are our business. and we train a lot in advance, anticipating those type of incidents, whether it's a high-risk vehicle stop that our officers become involved in. And more frequently, we had the workplace violence case with a manufacturer, and we trained hundreds and hundreds of hours for that active shooter type event. And in this particular event, we were fortunate in that there was only one victim. That certainly could have been different. But we were on the scene within 2 minutes and had the suspect in custody within 45 minutes. So in our world, that's a pretty big victory. Our thoughts and prayers certainly go out to the victim in this case. But those officers trained hundreds of hours for that type of response. So it wasn't just happenstance that we had that outcome. The Sergeant Jimmy Holford, was first on scene. He went directly to the victim. He created a warm zone for fire to immediately come in and provide advanced medical treatment, and saw that we took care of that victim as best we could, and then went around securing the facility, making sure everybody else was accounted for and safe. But again, those things don't happen by accident. It's hundreds of hours of training that gets us there.
Preparation is truly key. And I think just as that preparation is constant, so too in your response is the role of technological advancements. And that's really in any career in Janesville, but we see technology shape every facet of our lives. And not to kind of throw it back to your tenure, but how has really technology changed policing? And from a futurist perspective, where does that go?
So you're much more kind than some of my staff. They allege I started out with horses and call boxes,
yes.
which is not accurate. But I can tell you, when I started on the department, we had pretty low-tech radios and paper files is what we had to work with. And now we've got, in-squad computers. Everything is digital. It's really at the officers' fingertips, and that's been a big change for our responses. By way of example, going back to that manufacturing shooting, early on we had a name of the suspect, and one of the officers on the perimeter brought up his computer, and within seconds he was able to tell us where he lived over by Evansville and what kind of car he drove. Yeah. Well, that information proved critical to getting that person into custody.
Right.
And it's that digital immediate access to information that helps us. Also, other changes I've seen, DNA certainly has been an important factor. Video cameras, whether it's the Ring doorbells or business videos or the body cameras that our officers carry, is a big change. And then there's ballistic changes, and so a lot more on the science end that gets us to the right suspect and able to make arrests.
Yeah, tremendous asset. It really sounds like, and good to hear that it's being actively employed. And Sergeant Thompson, I know one upcoming training, maybe shifting a bit, that the JPD is offering officers and those from surrounding agencies, is on the topic of problem-oriented policing. Just for the lay person at home, what does that terminology entail, and what does it look like in practice?
Well, I guess I should start by saying thank you to Spectrum for funding that training opportunity for us. It's something that we offered back in 2010 for our officers, and we've had officers retire, officers leave, so it was a good time to refresh that training. In simplest terms, it's identifying a problem and then taking steps to resolve it. So, for instance, maybe a neighborhood there's some issues going on in the neighborhood, and we don't really know why the issues are going on. Looking deeper and possibly determining that the issues are stemming from a drug house that is in a neighborhood that's causing some type of friction or violence in the neighborhood, and then taking steps to resolve that. I mean, that would be, I guess, an example of problem-oriented policing.
Yeah, wonderful that we're able to offer that training. And that a community partner like Spectrum made that possible. So very exciting. And I know a little less exciting. I'm sure everyone at home is familiar with the staffing issues that we see, and not only our community, but our national labor force as a whole. Has the JPD experienced any of those effects, and what does today's recruiting look like for the department?
Yeah, we've actually had significant turnover in the last 3 years. Since 2020, we lost 27 officers to retirement or other opportunities. Today's recruitment, it has to be deliberate.
Yes.
We're looking for officers that want to spend the next 30 years working in the City of Janesville, working for the citizens of our community. So we have a recruitment team. They'll go out and speak at high schools, colleges, go to careers fairs. We advertise in social media. We do the traditional advertisement and, police-type magazines and newspapers. But then we also have a mentoring program where, hopefully through that cadet-type experience, it is offering people the opportunity to maybe see what law enforcement would be like and get them to become a member of our department.
Yeah, and I think as we think about what it's like and wanting people to spend, the better part or all of their careers with the JPD, perhaps no better guests, because I think I would wonder what personally and from what you folks witness on a daily basis, why is policing in Janesville a rewarding career, and what are some of those aspects that make it such a special calling?
We're very fortunate in law enforcement because if you look at our young workforce, they are very interested in jobs that have a sense of purpose. Mm-hmm. And that has been one of the strong points of law enforcement, is that we're strong on purpose. Yeah. We go out and do wonderful things for our community, and that can be very meaningful. So that's attractive to our young employees. We have many people interested in specifically Janesville, and many times officers coming from other departments because of all of the programming that we do. We have all these special teams embedded in the police department. It might be domestic violence, chronic nuisance. It could be CIT, SWAT, motorcycle, but all of these different teams that you can sign up for to be a part of. And our philosophy is to bring young officers into the department. We train a lot to make them good police officers. And then about that 2 or 3 year mark, we ask them what their passion is. And then based on what their passion is, we try and hook them up with those teams. And I've got to tell you, these folks go out and they just have good and great ideas and really serve the community well. Yeah,
and that's beneficial not only, of course, for the department, but for your officers, that you're doing that professional development. And you're allowing them and empowering them to bring those new ideas and to apply their passion fully. And I think from staffing then to a similar but kind of different administrative perspective, as the JPD looks to really maintain and sustain those successes we've had, what are a few of the department's funding priorities maybe for the next year and a little beyond?
It's all about staffing.
Yeah.
It really is. We are very lowly staffed a department. If I were to staff to our peer city average, we'd be hiring 18 police officers today. If I were to staff to a nearby community's officer per 1,000, we'd be adding 28 police officers today. So we're pretty lean.
Yeah. And
we don't have a lot of officers. The ones we have are invigorating and working hard and really serving the community well. But I've really got to watch this staffing issue. And it's not only the police officers, our records division. There's more and more reports that are being typed and written, and then more and more open records requests where these reports have to be vetted, and that takes time. And the most recent nuance, and this is a problem lying in wait, and that is our video cameras, because DA's office and defense attorneys all want to have these videos from the body cams, and they have to be watched by a staff member, and anything that is protected in those videos has to be removed. So it's very time involved, and we're hanging on right now, but we're going to need some staffing help here in short order.
Yeah, staffing focus. Well, and as we move now I think into the summertime months, it is June, and many things start to pick up out and about in Wisconsin's Park Place. And for the JPD, it means a busy season of community engagement and forging those bonds. Sergeant Thompson, I was wondering if you could maybe fill our viewers in on the full slate of summer fun and outreach you folks have for us.
Absolutely. So we're going to have our bike and motorcycle officers out and about, so it's a great opportunity to interact with our officers that are not in squad cars, and it's a little bit more of an opportunity just to connect, have those conversations. They're out on bikes on the bike trails, and
Right.
Down at Farmers Market, just different community events. We have a couple of coffee with the chief events. We have one June 1st at Mocha Moment. We're going to feature our K9 program there. We have one on July 12th at Bodacious Brew. Both of them are going to be 9 a.m. until 10:30 p.m. And we're going to feature our drone at that program.
Oh, neat.
And then we have another one planned for August at Havana Coffee. That date is still being finalized. We have 10 small neighborhood cookout events planned for the summer. Frequently, we go into neighborhoods that we don't have the trust that we would like. Sometimes set up our basketball hoop and park our trailer in front of a drug house that our street crimes unit just took down, and really try to build those relationships, build that trust that we're just lacking in those neighborhoods. And then, of course, we have our National Night Out planned for August that we're still trying to finalize.
Yes, ever a favorite fixture for the community, but great to hear that you and your team are busy building those relationships. And just as there's fun in the warmer months, there can also be some crucial safety tips that I think folks need to remember as they look to have a safe summer. Do either of you have any sort of summertime advice to keep our community safe?
Yeah, there's a couple of them that I have. I'd like to start with the home. Having an open home, unlocked doors, unlocked vehicles. I mean, it just invites, issues.
Yeah.
So I just, make sure your homes and vehicles are locked up. If you have valuables in the car, try to put them in the trunk or out of sight. If you're going to be away on vacation, perhaps stop your mail, stop your newspapers. Also, perhaps think about waiting to post those social media posts about your vacation trip until you get home. You don't want to advertise that you're out of town and nobody's going to be home. Other options are security devices, or even like light timers that can alert, possible burglars that, there's a light on that house. Maybe I should skip that house. Also, when I think about summer, I think people are out on bikes, they're running, they're walking. So just making sure you're alert if you're out in traffic. Have a properly fitted bike helmet. Watch for traffic. Try to cross at crossing walks, and just obey the traffic laws when you're out and about.
Yeah. Invite our viewers and all of our residents to take that active role in their safety, and of course actively deter any criminal activity. And I think it'll lead into naturally our next segment, which is Park Place Inquires, an opportunity for community members like yourself to submit questions for city staff to answer right here on the program. This month's quite topical question comes from Tina T., who asks, what happens to seized property that the JPD takes possession of as a part of a criminal investigation? Chief, I know I'm never offered any of the sweet rides, but what really happens to all the stuff that you might acquire through an investigation?
I think Sergeant Thompson can help us out with that.
Yeah, so, anything taken as a result of an arrest or an investigation, we hold until the courts deem we can release it. If we can release it back to the person, perfect, we'll do that. Some things like drugs or guns, they're destroyed. And then if we can't find the owner, or the owner doesn't want it, or we can't get it away, then we take it to auction.
Goes to auction. Very interesting. Something that might not be all that thought about, but certainly a process behind it. If you're like Tina and have an inquiry you would like answered right here on this program, submit it to us by emailing cojmedia@ci.janesville.wi.us. While your question may not be the one featured on the next episode, city staff will be happy to answer it for you. Well, gentlemen, thank you for stopping by. It's always great to hear about the work that JPD is doing to make Janesville a safe and healthy place for all of our residents and visitors. I know the forward-thinking, proactive approach that your team really takes to heart is imperative to making that happen, so thank you.
Good. Thanks, Nick.
And I want to thank you, our viewers and residents, for tuning in today and for all you do to help make Janesville a community of choice to realize life's opportunities. I also invite you to stay connected with the city by following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, signing up for emergency notifications from the JPD via the Nixle app, and receiving our weekly city press releases by visiting www.janesvillewi.gov/email lists. I also want to encourage you to tune into the program next month when I sit down with City Clerk Treasurer Lori Stotler. As the city prepares for a busy season of voting in the August primary and November midterms, it'll be great to have Clerk Treasurer on the program to share more about voting and all the other functions in the Clerk Treasurer's office. For Park Place Views in the City of Janesville, I'm Nick Faust. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next month.